Good evening and welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Stuart Lees. Tonight's top story. A British trawler has been seized by France as the fishing row rapidly escalates. France threatens further retaliations, but the government says their reaction is disappointing and disproportionate. Also tonight, a report by MPs says the £37 billion NHS Test and Trace programme did not achieve its main objective, despite being handed eye-watering sums of money. And the University of Aberdeen, a Cambridge University college, and a Paris museum are returning cultural artefacts to their African homelands this week, as African countries continue their struggle to recover works taken by explorers. The Environment Minister denounces France's seizure of a British trawler and warned Paris against further retaliation today as a row over post-Brexit fishing rights reaches new depths. The action signalled France's determination not to back down in the row a day after listing potential sanctions against Britain if there is no progress in talks with the EU. The French Seas Minister described the situation as a fight. NTD's erupt brings us this report.
The fishing row between Britain and France rapidly escalated on Thursday when France seized a British trawler for fishing in its waters without a licence. French Seas Minister Annick Girardin said the vessel was detained during checks off the northern port of Le Havre. A second British boat was fined for refusing to allow French police on board to carry out checks.
It is not war, it is a fight. The French fishermen have rights. An agreement has been signed. We must have this agreement implemented. We have fishing rights. We must defend them, and we will defend them.
France's actions appear intended as a warning shot to put pressure on Britain to compromise in talks with the EU. British fishing grounds are among the richest in the North East Atlantic, where most of the European Union's catch is hauled in. Girardin outlined potential sanctions against Britain if there is no progress in the talks.
We have some sanctions we could implement, especially on tariffs we could amend. There are already 4 measures implemented, including the reinforcement of controls of lorries to and from the United Kingdom. And of course, we're also working on some other measures.
En provenance du Royaume-Uni, bien entendu, nous travaillons également sur d'autres mesures si c'était nécessaire.
It is very disappointing.
The UK Environment Secretary said France's actions were disappointing, disproportionate, and not what we'd expect from a close ally and partner.
The measures being threatened do not appear to be compatible with the Trade and Cooperation Agreement or wider international law, and if carried through, will be met with an appropriate and calibrated response.
Eustace said, since the end of last year, the UK has issued nearly 1,700 licences, allowing EU vessels to fish in its exclusive zone, including over 700 from France. And 103 French vessels are allowed to fish in the UK's territorial waters, 6 to 12 nautical miles off Britain's shores.
So the UK has licensed 98% of the EU vessels who applied for access. Constructive discussions with the Commission continue on a methodology for allowing vessels to be replaced, and once finalised, more vessels will be licensed.
The fishing row started when the UK and Jersey approved just 12 of the 47 applications from French small boats. The UK government said the other 35 were unable to provide required documents.
We also support Jersey and Guernsey's handling of the fisheries licensing decisions, and we've remained in close contact with them throughout. Their approach has also been entirely in line with the provisions of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement.
The Jersey government issued a statement Thursday afternoon saying they are extremely disappointed at the French government's announcement on Wednesday. The statement says, after a meeting between officials from Jersey, France, the UK and the EU on Wednesday, they issued 162 licences to French vessels. On Wednesday, France announced a series of measures they plan to take from next week. The trawler seized by France has been identified as the Cornelist Gert Jan, a scallop dredger. Its owners said the vessel had a fishing licence and had been fishing legally. They are calling on the government to protect the rights of British fishermen. The captain of the boat is being held in France, where the Maritime Ministry said he could face criminal charges with his catch confiscated. The boat's owner could face a fine of £60,000. Earl Rhodes, NTD News.
A report by MPs says despite being handed eye-watering sums of money, NHS Test and Trace has not achieved its main objective to help break chains of COVID-19 transmission and enable people to return to a more normal way of life. The Public Accounts Committee said that Test and Trace's outcomes have been muddled and a number of its aims have been overstated or not achieved. It failed to deliver on its central promise of averting another lockdown. The report says when under pressure, Test and Trace performance deteriorates, with only 17% of people receiving tests within 24 hours in December 2020. The programme has been handed the equivalent of 20% of the entire annual NHS budget, £37 billion over 2 years. The committee also criticised Test and Trace spending, highlighting that it has not managed to reduce the number of expensive contractors who are paid an average of £1,100 per day. The University of Aberdeen said it was today handing back a sculpture to Nigeria that was taken during colonial times. It's a third European institution this week to do so. Of those, Jesus College at Cambridge was the first in the UK to agree to return the cultural artefacts to their African homelands. This report comes from NTD's Eddie Aiken.
The University of Aberdeen said it will on Thursday return a sculpture looted in colonial times to Nigeria. The so-called Benin bronze shows the head of a king of the once mighty kingdom of Benin located in what is now Nigeria. Aberdeen University is the third European institution in 2 days to hand back cultural artefacts to their African homelands. On Wednesday, Jesus College at Cambridge University returned the sculpture of a cockerel to a Nigerian delegation during a ceremony. Both the head and the cockerel are among thousands looted by British troops in 1897 from the court of Benin.
When one sees a wrong that is so egregious, when you notice it, the key institutional question, and maybe in fact the only institutional question one can ask, is how to right that wrong.
The Benin bronzes are among Africa's most culturally significant artefacts. And in Paris on the same day, the Quai Branly Museum returned 26 artworks to the Republic of Benin. They are among some 5,000 artefacts requested by the West African country, which borders Nigeria. President Emmanuel Macron visited the museum together with a Benin delegation. He recalled that during a visit to West Africa in 2017, he pledged to students there to return colonial art.
Toute jeunesse a besoin de s'approprier l'histoire de son pays.
Every youth needs to seize its heritage to build a better future, to recover its power and its mysteries. There was no reason for the youth of Africa to be deprived of its heritage.
À son patrimoine.
The handover marks a milestone in the years-long fight by African countries to recover works pillaged by explorers and colonists. French art historians estimate some 90% of Africa's cultural heritage is believed to be in Europe. Quai Branly alone holds around 70,000 African objects.
Les 26 œuvres ici exposées ensemble pour la première fois.
The 26 pieces of art that are shown here for the first time altogether represent an exceptional and irreplaceable cultural heritage for the people of Benin. They constitute an undeniable part of the cultural and religious identity of our country.
A visitor from Benin is enthused.
It's only the beginning. We want everything returned in any case, because when you go back home, you are proud. You're proud of your homeland when you return to it. For us, this is absolutely satisfying.
The wooden anthropomorphic statues, sacred altars and royal thrones from the collection known as the Abomey treasures were pilfered by the French army in 1892. They are currently on display in Paris before being handed over to Benin next month. Germany has agreed to start returning Benin bronzes held in its museums next year. Currently, the British Museum in London holds by far the largest and most significant collection of Benin bronzes. UK authorities say this ensures they remain accessible to the world. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
A local community in North Wales has voted for a statue of Africa explorer Sir Henry Morton Stanley to stay standing. Stanley is famous for rescuing the Scottish missionary and explorer Dr. David Livingstone in 1871, and is best known for asking Dr. Livingstone, I presume. The vote on removing the statue in his hometown of Denbigh was called in light of the Black Lives Matter movement, which accused him of links to imperialism and colonialism. The artist who was commissioned to create the statue tweeting a photo of the statue and wrote, "Well, happy my HM Stanley statue that had been forced into vote by Black Lives Matter has been voted to stay up by the public and by the Council of Denbigh. I'm very proud." The United Nations Climate Change Conference will start from this Sunday in Glasgow. COP stands for Conference of the Parties. This year will be the 26th annual summit, giving it the title COP26. The UK is this year's president. Now NTD's David English brings us this report on some of the key players of the summit and their pledges.
China is the world's top carbon emitter. During the Climate Leaders Summit in April, its leader Xi Jinping said China will start to phase down coal consumption over the 2026 to 2030 period. Xi is not expected to attend COP26 in person, and analysts say that without Xi, there will be little chance for a bold announcement. The United States is the world's second largest greenhouse gas emitter. President Biden said his country will cut greenhouse gases in half by the end of this decade.
And, we've set a goal that by 2025, our power sector will be free of carbon. And 2030, 50% of the cars sold in the United States, we believe, should be and must be electric vehicles.
The European Union is the third largest greenhouse gas emitter, producing around 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions. The EU has fixed into law targets to cut net emissions at least 55% by 2030 from 1990 levels and reduce them to zero by 2050.
We commit to reducing methane emissions by at least 30% by 2030. Methane, if you look at the greenhouse gas emissions, greenhouse gases, is the lowest hanging fruit. It is 80 times more warming than CO2, so there's urgent need to do something, and there is a lot we can do.
Von der Leyen on Thursday said 60 countries had joined this pledge, including the UK, US, France and Germany. It's not yet clear if China and Russia are among them. Russia, the world's fourth largest emitter of greenhouse gases, will strive to be carbon neutral no later than 2060.
Russia supports international initiatives to protect the climate, meets undertaken commitments. In the nearest decades, we are going to secure greenhouse gas emissions volume at a level even lower than the European Union.
The Kremlin announced last week that Putin will not be attending COP26. According to Global Carbon Atlas, the UK came 17th in the list of carbon emitters in the world in 2019. Prime Minister Boris Johnson made a Build Back Greener proposal last year aiming to bring all greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2050. David English, NTD News.
Ministers moved yesterday to cut China's involvement in Britain's nuclear sector. They created a new funding model that places the risk of future projects onto consumers, who will start paying for any new plants through their energy bills. Ministers say that it will make nuclear plants economically more viable in the long term. The decision will allow government to push out Chinese investments in the new nuclear site in Suffolk, known as Sizewell C. A Chinese state-owned company has a 20% stake in the £20 billion venture, but ministers have refused to sign the project off due to the Chinese involvement. The new funding mechanism hopes to allow French energy company EDF to find new investors and replace Chinese finance. Investments by China were also planned for Hinkley Point and Bradwell, but Bradwell has already been vetoed by ministers over security concerns. Ahead of next week's COP26 in Glasgow, we're taking a look at nuclear power. Some see it as a dangerous and costly relic of the 20th century, while others argue it's a crucial low-carbon source for a stable supply. The UK currently gets 16% of electricity from nuclear, and the government sees it as a part of its net zero strategy. NTD's Eddie Aiken explains.
The UN's International Atomic Energy Agency, in a new report, makes the case for nuclear energy playing a critical role in the energy transition. It argues that nuclear is in the best position to fully replace fossil fuels and is key to achieving global net zero. Nuclear power plants tap into the energy in the core of an atom. The released energy creates steam, which powers turbines for electricity generation. A nuclear plant doesn't release greenhouse gases, only water vapor. Globally, nuclear has a 10% share of electricity production. Nuclear can provide a stable 24/7 supply, while wind and other low-carbon sources are intermittent. Greenpeace UK sees no future role for nuclear, calling it too costly to build and too dangerous, anticipating a Fukushima-like meltdown every decade. And the Association for Renewable Energy and Clean Technology claims the UK can reach 100% renewable electricity in 11 years without the need for nuclear. Opponents also point to the hazards that come from uranium mining and the disposal of nuclear waste. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, in a 2018 report, acknowledged that nuclear plays a role in keeping temperature increases below the 1.5 degrees target, but it stressed the crucial role of social acceptance in society. The UK currently has 7 operational nuclear power plants, which provide about 16% of the country's electricity. There's widespread support for nuclear power both from the public and the main political parties. In the government's new net zero strategy, nuclear plays a part. It includes a £120 million fund for new nuclear technologies. In addition, this week, as part of the budget, the government proposed up to £1.7 billion of direct government funding for a large-scale nuclear project. It wants to reach a final decision in the current Parliament over building a new nuclear plant at Sizewell in Suffolk. Business and Energy Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng says, "In light of rising global gas prices, we need to ensure Britain's electricity grid of the future is bolstered by reliable and affordable nuclear power that's generated in this country." Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
Still to come, the price of baguettes in France is seen as a barometer of the country's economic health, and the French will go to great lengths to prevent price rises. But soaring wheat and energy costs are making this very difficult. That and more after the break. US police say actor Alec Baldwin was handed a gun containing a live round on the film set where a colleague was accidentally shot dead. Ukrainian cinematographer Helena Hutchins was killed on the set of the Western movie Baldwin was filming in New Mexico. The shooting has sent shockwaves through Hollywood, prompting a debate about safety protocols in film and television and working conditions on low-budget productions. NTD's David English has more details on the investigation.
The Santa Fe County Sheriff says they believe they have the long Colt revolver that actor Alec Baldwin fired, and that they have the spent shell case that held the bullet. The sheriff said the lead projectile was recovered from the filmmaker Joel Souza's shoulder.
We regard this specific spent casing and recovered projectile to be the live round that was fired from the revolver by Mr. Baldwin. We have recovered what we believe to be possible additional live rounds on set.
Baldwin had accidentally shot and killed cinematographer Helena Hutchins on the set of the Western movie Rust. Now the Sheriff's Office is continuing their investigation, conducting interviews and further analysing evidence.
I said there was a total of 500 rounds of ammunition. That is a mix of blanks, dummy rounds, and what we are suspecting live rounds.
Authorities said the additional live rounds found on the set would be subject to testing by ballistics experts. No one has been charged yet in the deadly shooting.
All options are on the table at this point. I'm not commenting on charges, whether they will be filed or not, or on whom. So the answer is we cannot answer that question yet until we complete a more thorough investigation.
The district attorney said Baldwin has been cooperative in the investigation. Court filings say Baldwin was handed what he thought was a cold gun, meaning no live rounds. An affidavit says the assistant director who handed Baldwin the gun did not check all the rounds loaded into it before the shooting. David English, NTD News.
The EU Parliament needs to confront the Chinese regime on its forced organ harvesting atrocities, a Dutch lawmaker said on Wednesday. Peter van Dalen pointed out that the last time the Parliament acted on the issue was in 2013, when it adopted a resolution condemning organ transplant abuse in China. He told a conference on organ harvesting in Brussels such inaction was unacceptable. Van Dalen said a major factor for the EU's silence has been its close economic relations with China. In June 2019, an independent tribunal in London said that the Chinese regime has been killing prisoners of conscience for their organs on a significant scale, and that the principal victim group has been adherents of the Falun Gong spiritual practice. Van Dalen said a hearing on the topic may take place in the coming months. In France, the price of baguettes is often seen as an indicator of how healthy the economy is, and bakers will go to great lengths to keep it from rising. So worldwide increases in the price of wheat, as well as energy, has got the French worried that they may soon have to pay more for this staple food. Here's NTD's Joy Felix with the story.
Soaring wheat costs are alarming French households, who fear a rise in the price of baguettes. Many bakeries are putting up signs warning customers of an increase. The price of the long, crunchy loaf is seen as a barometer of French economic health, and it has rarely changed over the last few decades.
The price of baguettes has increased 23 cents over the past 20 years. It shows how close we are to this product. The baguette is precious for bakers and the French people alike. 70% of baguettes are sold in bakeries, and every French person has baguettes. It's like buying a pint of milk in England or other special goods.
Since September, the price of wheat has gone up 30% worldwide after bad harvests in Russia. Wheat flour is one of the baguette's key ingredients. Anract says rising energy prices are also making ovens more expensive to run. Baguettes are so loved by the French that the bakers will increase the prices of other products to keep the baguette price down.
We agreed with the millers on an increase in flour costs from November the 1st, but we decided not to increase the price of baguettes to not affect our customers. Instead, we will increase the price of our specialty breads.
France, 67 million people munch through 320 baguettes every second. That's 10 billion a year. Its status of its quintessential French food started in the 1920s, when a law prevented bakers from working before 4 a.m. The long, thin baguette was the only bread bakers could make in time for breakfast. 100 years later, French bakers may again need to adapt.
On n'a pas de visibilité sur l'avenir en fait.
We can't see the future. We don't know where this will end. It starts here, but after tomorrow, or in 6 months, we don't know where we're going to be, especially financially.
The bread industry faces a price crunch, but the baguette will stick to its special place in French hearts. Joy Felix, NTD News.
And finally, the volcano on the Spanish island of La Palma continues to erupt, and the lava flow is not expected to stop anytime soon. Scientists have employed some robot help to learn what the lava is doing to marine life around the island as it reaches the sea. NTD's Eddie Aiken brings us more on this.
100 meters below the sea, a robot gathers rock. An underwater vehicle monitors how ongoing volcanic eruptions affect the marine ecosystems around the island of La Palma. The robot sends back high-definition images of underwater life, such as crustaceans, sponges, and gardens of whip corals. It also gathers samples of rock, gas, fauna, and water. Ash now covers some of the marine habitat as lava advances into the sea. A team of oceanographers, geologists, and microbiologists will study what this is doing to life in La Palma's ocean. The eruption has forced over 7,000 people to evacuate. Scientists say it could go on for 3 months. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
That's the news for today. Have a good evening.